What if a single voyage could fundamentally alter humanity's understanding of the world? On August 3rd, 1492, as the first rays of dawn illuminated the port of Palos de la Frontera in Spain, a Genoese mariner named Christopher Columbus was about to embark on such a transformative journey. With 3 modest ships under his command, the Niña, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria, he stood at the threshold of an expedition that would challenge every known map and maritime convention of his time. The late 15th century was an era when most European scholars already accepted that the Earth was round, yet the true size of our planet remained a mystery. Columbus, armed with calculations that would later prove significantly flawed, believed he could reach the rich lands of Asia by sailing west across the Atlantic. What he didn't know was that his miscalculations would lead to one of history's most consequential accidents. As Columbus and his crew of 90 men prepared to set sail that August morning, they carried with them not just provisions and navigational instruments, but also the weight of unprecedented ambition. They were about to venture into waters that European ships had never systematically explored, guided by little more than celestial navigation and controversial mathematical computations. The atmosphere at the port was thick with anticipation and dread. Many believed these brave souls were sailing to their doom, perhaps to fall off the edge of the world or be devoured by sea monsters that medieval cartographers had drawn in unknown waters. This voyage would do more than just add new lands to maps. It would shatter the medieval European worldview, trigger an unprecedented exchange of cultures, crops, and diseases, and initiate a chain of events that would reshape the global balance of power for centuries to come. As those 3 small ships disappeared over the horizon, they carried with them the seeds of what would become the first truly global age in human history. The journey that began that morning would not only transform our understanding of geography, but would also fundamentally change the course of human civilization. It would connect continents, merge distinct biological worlds, and begin an era of exploration that would eventually map every corner of our planet. This was more than just a voyage across an unknown ocean. It was humanity's first step into a new age of discovery and global interconnectedness. The world is round, and I shall prove it. These words, attributed to Christopher Columbus, echo through time, not for their scientific insight, as most educated Europeans already accepted Earth's spherical shape, but for their embodiment of Renaissance ambition and the dawn of the Age of Discovery. Late 15th century Spain was a powder keg of opportunity and ambition. The year 1492 marked more than just Columbus's famous voyage. It was also the year when the Spanish Reconquista reached its conclusion with the fall of Granada, the last Muslim stronghold in Iberia. The unified Spanish crown, flush with victory and resources, stood ready to challenge the established powers of Europe in the race for global dominion. This was an era of unprecedented transformation. In the East, the fall of Constantinople to the Ottoman Empire in 1453 had disrupted traditional trade routes to Asia, forcing European powers to seek alternative paths to the lucrative spice trade. Portugal had already been pioneering routes around Africa, establishing a promising presence along its western coast. The pressure was mounting for Spain to make its mark on the world stage. The European appetite for exploration was fueled by a potent mixture of motivations: the allure of Asian riches, the zeal for Christian evangelization, and the Renaissance spirit of scientific inquiry. Technological advances in shipbuilding, navigation, and cartography made such ambitious voyages possible. The invention of the caravel, with its revolutionary sail configuration, opened up new possibilities for long-distance ocean travel. In the courts of Europe, a new type of power politics was emerging. The old feudal order was giving way to centralized nation-states, each vying for supremacy. Knowledge became power in a very literal sense. Maps were classified state secrets, and navigational discoveries could alter the fortune of entire kingdoms. This was the world that Columbus stepped into with his audacious proposal to reach Asia by sailing west. The maritime technology of the time was advancing rapidly. The widespread adoption of the magnetic compass, the astrolabe, and improved naval charts had made ocean navigation more reliable than ever before. Yet these tools would be tested to their limits in the vast expanse of the Atlantic, where Columbus and his crew would sail beyond the edge of all known maps. In the background, the first tremors of what we now call globalization were beginning to shake the foundations of the old world order. The Portuguese had already established contact with West Africa, bringing back gold, ivory, and tragically slaves. The Spanish crown, seeing the profits their neighbors were reaping, knew they needed to act decisively to secure their place in this new age of maritime empires. This is the context in which Columbus made his bold proposal: a world of emerging empires, technological revolution, religious fervor, and economic competition. His voyage would not just add new lines to the maps, it would fundamentally reshape the global balance of power and initiate an unprecedented era of intercontinental contact and exchange. Want to discover how this pivotal moment forever altered the course of history? Join us at Modern Age Chronicles for an unprecedented journey through the modern age. Subscribe now, hit the notification bell, and leave your like to embark on this extraordinary historical adventure. Together, we'll explore how a single voyage set in motion events that would reshape our world for centuries to come. Christopher Columbus emerges from the pages of history as a figure of striking contradictions. Born around 1451 in Genoa, Italy, as Cristoforo Colombo, he came from a modest family of wool weavers. From these humble beginnings, he would rise to become one of history's most consequential navigators, though his path was anything but straightforward. Young Columbus began his maritime career at the tender age of 14, learning the art of navigation in the bustling ports of the Mediterranean. His early years at sea shaped him into a resourceful and skilled navigator, but they also revealed his exceptional talent for self-promotion and persuasion. Despite lacking formal education, he was an avid autodidact, voraciously consuming books about geography, astronomy, and religion whenever he could access them. His personality was a complex tapestry of traits that would both serve and hinder him throughout his life. Deeply religious, Columbus believed himself to be divinely chosen for his mission. He frequently quoted scripture and later claimed that his discoveries were prophesied in the Bible. This religious fervor blended with an almost obsessive ambition that drove him to persist despite repeated rejections from various royal courts. The complexity of Columbus's character reveals itself in his meticulous record-keeping, alongside his tendency to embellish or obscure facts when it suited his purposes. He maintained 2 logbooks during his voyages, one with accurate distances for navigation, another with shortened distances to reassure his nervous crew. This duality exemplifies his pragmatic approach to achieving his goals, even when it meant deceiving others. Queen Isabella of Castile, one of the most powerful women of her age, emerges as a crucial figure in this story. Far from being merely the monarch who funded Columbus's voyage, she was a shrewd politician who saw the strategic potential in his proposal. Her own character was marked by fierce determination and political acumen. She had already proven herself as a military leader during the Reconquista, and her decision to support Columbus came after careful consideration of the potential political and economic benefits for her kingdom. King Ferdinand of Aragon, Isabella's husband and co-monarch, brought a more cautious approach to the enterprise. While often overshadowed by Isabella in the Columbus story, Ferdinand's diplomatic expertise and political wisdom were crucial in creating the stable foundation that made such risky ventures possible. The dynamic between these Catholic monarchs, as they were known, would prove essential to the success of the expedition. The crew members of the three caravels, the Niña, Pinta, and Santa Maria, represent another crucial dimension of this historical drama. Among them was Martín Alonso Pinzón, captain of the Pinta and a respected navigator in his own right. His local influence in Palos was instrumental in recruiting crew members when many were reluctant to join such a risky venture. His brother, Vicente Yáñez Pinzón, commanded the Niña and would later become an accomplished explorer himself. Juan de la Cosa, owner and master of the Santa Maria, would survive to become one of the great cartographers of the Age of Discovery. These men were not merely subordinates, but skilled mariners whose expertise and cooperation were essential to the voyage's success. The crew also included Luis de Torres, a converted Jew who served as interpreter, expecting to converse with the Asian rulers Columbus hoped to meet. His presence highlights the expedition's original intent and the complex religious and cultural dynamics of 15th century Spain. Together, these individuals formed a web of personalities, ambitions, and skills that would enable one of history's most significant voyages. Their interactions, conflicts, and collaborations would shape not only the success of the expedition, but also its lasting impact on world history. Step aboard a 15th century caravel and your senses are immediately overwhelmed. The pungent mixture of saltwater-soaked wood and tar, used for waterproofing, fills your nostrils, a smell that becomes permanently embedded in every sailor's memory. The ancient pine and oak timbers groan under the constant assault of waves, creating a symphony of creaks and moans that echo throughout the vessel. Hemp ropes, stiff with salt and perpetually damp, screech as they run through wooden pulleys, their fibers straining against the constant wind. The texture of life at sea surrounds you. Rough canvas sails, weathered by sun and salt, snap and flutter overhead. Their coarse weave, essential for durability in Atlantic gales, feels like sandpaper under calloused hands. The wooden deck, worn smooth by countless feet, becomes treacherously slick with sea spray. At night, the stars pierce the darkness with an intensity modern city dwellers can scarcely imagine, serving as both navigation tools and silent companions on the endless horizon. Daily life aboard Columbus's ships was an exercise in endurance. Sailors worked, ate and slept in shifts on the open deck, with only the officers and Columbus himself having access to small, cramped cabins. The constant motion of the ships made even simple tasks challenging. Men would wedge themselves between barrels or brace against masts just to maintain balance while performing their duties. The diet aboard was monotonous and increasingly unpalatable as the voyage progressed. Ships departed with stores of salted beef, dried fish, hardtack biscuits, often infested with weevils, beans and wine. Fresh water, stored in wooden casks, would gradually turn brackish and green with algae. Rats were a constant presence, consuming precious food stores and spreading disease. The crew supplemented their rations by fishing when possible, but as they ventured into unknown waters, even familiar fish became scarce. Clothing was functional and minimal. Sailors typically owned 2 sets of clothes: loose-fitting linen shirts, wool breeches, and simple leather shoes. Their garments, constantly damp with seawater and sweat, would rot in the tropical heat. Many went barefoot on deck, their feet toughened by constant exposure to salt water and rough wood. Protection from the elements came in the form of woolen caps and, for lucky ones, leather jerkins. The navigation technology of 1492, while advanced for its time, would seem primitive today. The magnetic compass was the most reliable tool, housed in a wooden box called a binnacle. Quadrants and astrolabes helped determine latitude by measuring the angle of celestial bodies above the horizon. But these instruments required stable conditions to use effectively, a rare luxury on the rolling Atlantic. Dead reckoning, estimating position based on speed, time, and direction, was the primary method of tracking progress, supplemented by depth soundings in shallower waters. The ships themselves represented the cutting edge of 15th century maritime technology. The caravel design, with its combination of square and lateen, triangular sails, allowed for both speed and maneuverability. The Santa Maria, the largest of the three at about 62 feet long, served as the flagship but was actually a carrack, a bulkier design. The Nina and Pinta, true caravels, were smaller but more agile. Time aboard was marked by the turning of the glass, sand glasses that measured half-hour intervals. The ship's bell rang to signal watch changes, one of the few regular rhythms in the monotony of ocean travel. Sailors worked in 4-hour shifts, with duties including handling sails, pumping out the perpetually leaking bilge, making repairs, and keeping watch from the crow's nest. The psychological environment was perhaps the most challenging aspect of the voyage. As the ships ventured further west than any European vessel had ever sailed, anxiety grew among the crew. The compass began behaving strangely due to magnetic variation. Familiar stars disappeared below the horizon, and even the reliable trade winds seemed to mock them with their steadfast westward blow. Helpful for sailing west, but a terrifying prospect when considering the return journey. The story of Columbus's journey unfolds like a carefully orchestrated symphony in 4 movements. The preparation phase began in the bustling ports of Spain, where Columbus faced the monumental task of assembling his fleet. The Spanish crown provided funding, but the real challenge lay in recruiting crew members willing to sail into the unknown. Many sailors, hearing of the planned westward journey, refused to join what they considered a suicide mission. Columbus relied heavily on the Pinzon brothers' local influence to gather his crew of 90 men. The expedition's development phase tested every aspect of seamanship and human endurance. As the ships ventured further west, the crew faced increasingly severe challenges. The trade winds, while favorable for westward travel, sparked fears about the return journey. The compass began showing inexplicable variations, and familiar stars disappeared below the horizon. Food stores deteriorated, and the water turned brackish. After 36 days at sea, tension aboard the ships reached a breaking point. Rumors of mutiny circulated, though historical records debate their severity. The climactic moment arrived on October 12, 1492, when Rodrigo de Triana, a lookout aboard the Pinta, spotted land. The ships had reached what Columbus believed to be Asia, but was actually the Bahamas. The first encounter with the Taino people marked a pivotal moment in human history, the meeting of 2 worlds that had developed independently for millennia. Columbus noted the Taínos' friendliness and their gold ornaments, observations that would have fatal consequences for these indigenous peoples. The discovery's aftermath resonated across continents and centuries. Columbus's return to Spain triggered a rush for exploration and colonization that would reshape the global balance of power. The Spanish crown quickly moved to secure papal recognition of their claims to the new lands, leading to the Treaty of Tordesillas in 1494, which divided the non-European world between Spain and Portugal. From the European perspective, the voyage represented triumph, a validation of their technological prowess and the beginning of their global dominance. The discovery of new lands rich in resources fed into the emerging mercantile economic system. European nations scrambled to establish colonies, leading to unprecedented wealth accumulation and the rise of new economic systems. For indigenous civilizations, Columbus's arrival marked the beginning of a catastrophic transformation. The subsequent decades saw the collapse of ancient civilizations, devastating population losses from disease and warfare, and the destruction of countless cultural traditions. The Taino population of Hispaniola, estimated at 250,000 when Columbus arrived, had virtually disappeared by 1550. The geopolitical consequences were equally profound. The voyage initiated the Spanish Empire's rise to global supremacy and sparked a centuries-long competition among European powers for colonial possessions. This competition would reshape global trade routes, establish new economic systems, and create political structures that would influence international relations well into the modern era. Columbus's journey marked the beginning of what historians call the Columbian Exchange, a massive transfer of plants, animals, culture, technology, diseases, and people between the old and new worlds. This exchange transformed diets, agriculture, and populations on both sides of the Atlantic. European crops like wheat traveled west, while American crops like maize, potatoes, and tomatoes transformed European cuisine and agriculture. The dramatic scope of these changes raises profound questions about Columbus's true objectives. While he claimed to seek a western route to Asia, some historians suggest his goal might have been the discovery of new lands all along. His careful study of wind patterns and his interest in the tales of western lands hint at a more complex agenda than his official mission suggested. This story continues to resonate today, challenging us to consider the complex legacy of exploration and conquest. Was Columbus a brilliant navigator who expanded humanity's understanding of the world, or was he the harbinger of one of history's most devastating cultural collisions? The answer likely encompasses both perspectives, highlighting the intricate relationship between human achievement and its often unforeseen consequences. Would you like to join us in exploring these fascinating historical questions? Share your thoughts about Columbus's true objectives in the comments below, and don't forget to hit the notification bell to catch our upcoming episodes. History is full of such complex characters and world-changing moments, and we're just getting started with our exploration of the modern age. The historical record of Columbus's voyages rests upon a rich foundation of primary sources, though many have been subjected to centuries of scholarly debate and interpretation. At the heart of this documentation lies Columbus's personal shiplog, a detailed account that survives today through a transcription made by Bartolomé de las Casas. This journal provides intimate details of the voyage, from daily navigational observations to first impressions of the lands and peoples encountered. Columbus's log reveals fascinating insights into both maritime practices and the navigator's mindset. His entries describe wind patterns, sea conditions, and astronomical observations with remarkable precision. However, the log also contains deliberate deceptions. Columbus maintained two sets of distance calculations, one accurate and one understated, to prevent his crew from realizing how far they had traveled from familiar waters. His October 11, 1492 entry famously describes the first signs of land: strange birds, a floating branch with fresh berries, and a carved staff, details that heightened the crew's anticipation of landfall. Royal correspondence provides another crucial documentary layer. Letters between Columbus and the Spanish monarchs illuminate the political and economic framework of the expedition. The capitulations of Santa Fe, signed by Ferdinand and Isabella in April 1492, outline Columbus's rights and privileges, including his titles and potential profits. These documents reveal the complex negotiations that preceded the voyage and the Crown's expectations for return on investment. Perhaps most significant is Columbus's letter announcing his discovery, written aboard the Niña in February 1493. This letter, rapidly translated and distributed across Europe, became a Renaissance-era bestseller. Multiple versions exist, with subtle but significant variations that scholars have used to trace the spread of information about the New World through European intellectual networks. Archaeological evidence has provided crucial physical confirmation of historical accounts. Excavations at La Isabela, the first European settlement in the Americas established during Columbus's second voyage, have yielded artifacts that match contemporary descriptions. Maritime archaeologists have studied shipwreck sites believed to be associated with early Spanish voyages, providing insights into vessel construction, navigation equipment, and daily life aboard 15th-century ships. The evolution of cartography following Columbus's voyages tells its own compelling story. The 1500 Juan de la Cosa map, created by Columbus's chief navigator, represents the first known European depiction of the Americas. This map's detailed coastlines and annotations reveal how quickly European understanding of the New World developed. The famous Waldseemüller map of 1507 further demonstrates this rapid knowledge acquisition, being the first to use the name America. Contemporary artistic representations provide valuable cultural context. Early woodcuts depicting Columbus's arrival, while often historically inaccurate, reveal European perceptions of the encounter with the New World. The Theodore de Bry engravings, though created in the late 16th century, became influential in shaping European imagery of the Americas and its inhabitants, despite their heavily Europeanized interpretations of indigenous peoples and landscapes. Material culture from both sides of the Atlantic has proved invaluable to researchers. Indigenous artifacts from the contact period, including traded goods and modified European items, help reconstruct the early dynamics of cultural exchange. Metallurgical analysis of gold objects has helped trace trading patterns and technological transfers between cultures. Scientific evidence has added new dimensions to historical understanding. Analysis of tree rings and ice cores has provided climate data for the late 15th century, helping scholars understand the weather conditions Columbus encountered. DNA studies of plants, animals, and human populations have confirmed the massive biological exchange that followed his voyages. Recently discovered documents continue to emerge from Spanish archives, adding new details to our understanding. The Libro de los Privilegios, Columbus's personal compilation of royal grants and privileges, provides insight into his legal battles with the Spanish crown. Letters from lesser-known participants in the voyages offer alternative perspectives on key events. Linguistic evidence has also proved valuable. Analysis of place names recorded by Columbus, combined with studies of Taíno language fragments, has helped scholars reconstruct his actual landing sites and early routes through the Caribbean. The evolution of nautical terminology in Spanish and Portuguese documents tracks the development of navigation technology during this period. Each piece of evidence presents its own interpretative challenges. Documents must be understood within their historical context, considering the biases and limitations of their creators. Archaeological findings require careful dating and contextual analysis. Artistic representations often reflect contemporary European aesthetics more than historical reality. Modern technology has enabled new approaches to these historical materials. Digital imaging has revealed previously illegible portions of damaged documents. Computer modeling has helped test theories about navigation techniques and weather conditions. These technological tools, combined with traditional historical methods, continue to yield new insights into this pivotal moment in human history. This rich documentary record allows us to reconstruct not just the events of Columbus's voyages, but their broader historical context and lasting impact. Through careful analysis of these diverse sources, we can better understand both the immediate circumstances of the discovery and its profound implications for world history. The impact of Columbus's voyages created ripples that would transform into tidal waves of change, fundamentally altering the course of human history across multiple continents. The immediate consequences began unfolding even before Columbus returned to Spain with news of his discovery. The initiation of European colonization occurred with stunning rapidity. Within decades of Columbus's first voyage, Spanish settlements dotted the Caribbean islands and expeditions pushed into the mainland of both American continents. This rapid expansion was driven by a potent combination of religious zeal, economic ambition, and political competition. The Spanish crown quickly established the encomienda system, which effectively enslaved indigenous populations under the guise of religious conversion and civilization. The Columbian Exchange represents perhaps the most significant biological event since the end of the Pleistocene era. This unprecedented transfer of life forms between hemispheres transformed ecosystems, agriculture, and human health on a global scale. European wheat, cattle, and horses moved westward, while American maize, potatoes, and tomatoes revolutionized Old World agriculture and cuisine. The potato alone would later become a staple food that supported Europe's population explosion and industrialization. The demographic and cultural impact was immediate and devastating for indigenous peoples. The introduction of European diseases like smallpox, measles, and influenza triggered what some scholars call the Great Dying, possibly the largest demographic collapse in human history. Conservative estimates suggest that 90% of the indigenous population of the Americas perished within a century of first contact. Complex civilizations that had developed over millennia collapsed in decades, taking with them vast repositories of knowledge, technology, and cultural practices. The long-term consequences continue to shape our world today. The global geopolitical order was fundamentally redesigned as European powers raced to establish colonial empires. Spain's initial advantage from Columbus's discovery helped create the first truly global empire, but other European nations quickly followed. This competition for colonial possessions would drive international relations for centuries, establishing patterns of global inequality that persist into the present. Economic transformations were equally profound. The influx of American silver into Europe triggered price revolutions and facilitated the transition from feudal to capitalist economies. New trade routes and commercial networks emerged, creating the first truly global economy. The plantation system, developed in the Caribbean and later expanded throughout the Americas, created new forms of labor exploitation through African slavery, while generating unprecedented wealth for European powers. The genocide of indigenous peoples represents one of history's greatest tragedies. Beyond the immediate demographic collapse from disease, European colonization brought systematic destruction of native societies through warfare, enslavement, and cultural suppression. Traditional knowledge systems, religious practices, and social structures were deliberately targeted for elimination. The psychological impact of this cultural devastation continues to affect indigenous communities today. The birth of globalization as we know it can be traced directly to Columbus's voyages. For the first time in human history, sustained contact between the Eastern and Western hemispheres created truly global networks of trade, culture, and information exchange. This process integrated previously isolated biological zones, economic systems, and cultural spheres, creating new hybrid forms of culture and society. The environmental impact was equally revolutionary. The transfer of crops led to new agricultural practices that transformed landscapes on both sides of the Atlantic. European livestock introduced to the Americas changed ecosystems, while American crops like maize and cassava enabled agricultural expansion in Africa and Asia. These changes altered not just the physical environment, but also human relationships with nature. The introduction of African slavery to the Americas, initially a response to the collapse of indigenous populations, created demographic and social patterns that continue to influence societies throughout the Western Hemisphere. The triangular trade between Europe, Africa, and the Americas established economic relationships and power dynamics that would persist long after the end of formal colonialism. Technological and scientific development accelerated dramatically. European navigation and shipbuilding techniques evolved rapidly in response to the challenges of transatlantic travel. Cartographic knowledge expanded exponentially, while new observations of flora, fauna, and human societies challenged existing scientific and philosophical frameworks. The exchange of ideas and technologies had far-reaching consequences. European understanding of mathematics, astronomy, and medicine was enhanced by exposure to American knowledge systems, while European technologies transformed warfare, agriculture, and construction practices in the Americas. This intellectual exchange, though often unequal and violent, contributed to the scientific revolution and the Enlightenment. Religious transformations were equally significant. The Catholic Church's role in colonization established new patterns of religious authority and cultural domination. Indigenous spiritual practices were suppressed or syncretized with Christianity, while the challenge of evangelizing new populations sparked theological debates that would influence European religious thought. These impacts continue to evolve and generate new consequences. Modern debates about economic inequality, cultural identity, environmental protection, and social justice often trace their roots to the processes set in motion by Columbus's voyages. Understanding these complex legacies is crucial for addressing contemporary global challenges and fostering more equitable forms of international interaction. The analysis of these impacts reveals not just historical facts, but ongoing processes that continue to shape our world. The complexity of these consequences challenges simplistic narratives about progress and civilization, requiring us to confront difficult questions about human society, power, and the true costs of historical transformation. The late 15th century marked a pivotal moment in human civilization, characterized by dramatic shifts in scientific understanding, technological capability, and worldview. The scientific paradigm of this era was undergoing a profound transformation, particularly in geographical knowledge. While medieval Mappae Mundi had represented the world more as a theological concept than a geographical reality, new empirical observations were rapidly expanding European understanding of global geography. Portuguese explorations along the African coast had already challenged many classical geographic assumptions. Ptolemy's influential works, rediscovered during the Renaissance, provided mathematical frameworks for cartography, though his calculations would prove problematic for Columbus. The concept of spherical Earth was widely accepted among educated Europeans, but debates raged about the planet's circumference and the distribution of land and water. European expansionism emerged from a complex philosophical foundation. The Renaissance had fostered a new spirit of inquiry and human capability, while economic motivations drove the search for new trade routes. This expansionist philosophy combined religious missionary zeal with mercantile pragmatism. The concept of civilizing missions provided moral justification for exploration and conquest, while commercial interests supplied practical motivation. The Portuguese Prince Henry the Navigator had established a systematic approach to exploration, combining practical seamanship with theoretical study. This methodical expansion of geographical knowledge created a model that other European powers would follow. The philosophy of expansion was deeply intertwined with the idea of crusading Christianity, viewing exploration as both a commercial and spiritual enterprise. Navigational technology underwent revolutionary development during this period. The magnetic compass, while known earlier, became more reliable with improved mounting systems. The astrolabe, adapted from Arab astronomers, allowed reliable latitude calculations, while the quadrant provided additional celestial measurement capabilities. The development of astronomical tables facilitated celestial navigation, though longitude calculation remained problematic until the 18th century. Portuguese caravel design represented a quantum leap in sailing technology. These vessels combined the square sails of northern European ships with triangular lateen sails from the Mediterranean, allowing unprecedented maneuverability and windward sailing ability. Improved hull designs and construction techniques created ships capable of long ocean voyages. Religious belief systems played a crucial role in shaping the age of exploration. The Catholic Church's worldview influenced everything from navigation to diplomatic relations. Columbus himself was deeply religious, viewing his voyages as fulfilling biblical prophecies. The Spanish monarchy's recent triumph over Islamic Granada added religious fervor to their imperial ambitions. The papal division of the non-Christian world between Spain and Portugal through the Treaty of Tordesillas exemplified how religious authority shaped political realities. Missionaries accompanied expeditions, making conversion an integral part of exploration. Religious beliefs also influenced scientific understanding, as biblical interpretations were reconciled with new geographical discoveries. Maritime medicine and health practices reflected both the scientific limitations and practical innovations of the age. Scurvy, though not yet understood, was empirically managed by some captains who insisted on carrying fresh fruits. Shipboard hygiene was primitive by modern standards, but some practices, like regular deck cleaning with vinegar, showed early understanding of disease prevention. Medical knowledge combined classical Galenic theory with practical experience. Ships carried barber surgeons who could perform basic procedures and treat common ailments. Traditional remedies, often based on humoral theory, were supplemented by new treatments learned from encountered peoples. The exchange of medical knowledge became part of the broader Columbian exchange as European and indigenous healing practices began to intermingle. Disease played a crucial role in the age of exploration, though contemporary understanding of epidemiology was limited. Ships served as vectors for disease transmission between continents, while tropical diseases posed new challenges to European explorers. The devastating impact of European diseases on indigenous populations, though not understood at the time, would prove one of the most significant consequences of this period. These various aspects of civilizational context converged to create conditions that made Columbus's voyages possible and shaped their profound impact on world history. The interaction between scientific knowledge, technological capability, philosophical outlook, religious beliefs, and medical practices define not only the parameters of exploration, but also its lasting consequences for human civilization. Critical reflection on Columbus's legacy has evolved dramatically over the centuries. While he was long celebrated as a heroic discoverer, modern scholarship has fostered more nuanced discussions about the consequences of his voyages. Consider his first interaction with the Taino people. Columbus's journal entries show both admiration for their hospitality and immediate calculations about their potential for exploitation. This duality encapsulates the complex moral questions surrounding European expansion. Historical debates about Columbus remain vigorous and multifaceted. One persistent controversy centers on his true identity and origins. While traditionally accepted as Genoese, alternative theories suggest possible Portuguese, Spanish, or even Jewish origins. These debates reflect broader questions about national identity and historical narrative building in the Age of Discovery. The true measure of Columbus's navigational abilities generates ongoing scholarly discussion. Was he an exceptional mariner who accurately predicted western winds and currents, or did he benefit from extraordinary luck? His significant miscalculation of Earth's circumference raises questions about whether he was genuinely seeking Asia or had other destinations in mind. Some historians argue that he may have had prior knowledge of Western lands, possibly through Portuguese sources or fishermen's accounts. Modern connections to Columbus's voyages appear in unexpected places. Contemporary debates about globalization echo the transformative effects of the Columbian exchange. Current discussions about cultural appropriation, indigenous rights, and environmental impact parallel the consequences of that first contact between old and new worlds. The conquest's legacy influences modern immigration policies, economic relationships, and cultural interactions throughout the Americas. Alternative theories about pre-Columbian contact continue to intrigue researchers. Norse settlements in North America are well documented, but other proposed contacts remain controversial. Some researchers suggest African, Chinese, or Polynesian voyages reached the Americas before Columbus. While most lack conclusive evidence, these theories highlight the complexity of human maritime history. Fascinating expedition curiosities often escape popular accounts. For instance, Columbus's crew included freed prisoners and debtors, as few experienced sailors would volunteer. The expedition's financing came not just from the Spanish crown, but also from private Italian investors. Columbus himself stood to gain an astounding 10% of all profits from newly discovered lands, though collecting these rewards would lead to years of legal battles. The psychological impact of the voyage reveals compelling human elements. The crew experienced phenomena never before recorded by Europeans, including the Sargasso Sea's vast fields of seaweed and the complete disappearance of the North Star as they sailed south. These experiences challenged their fundamental understanding of the world. Contemporary resonance appears in unexpected ways. Columbus's negotiation techniques with the Spanish crown mirror modern startup pitches to investors. His management of crew morale during the voyage offers lessons relevant to modern leadership studies. The ecological consequences of the Columbian exchange provide cautionary tales for current environmental challenges. Recently discovered documents continue adding new dimensions to the story. Archives in Genoa, Seville, and the Vatican occasionally yield new information about the expedition's preparation and aftermath. Digital analysis of historical documents has revealed previously unnoticed details about weather patterns, navigation techniques, and crew relationships. The expedition generated numerous technological innovations whose influence persists. Columbus's navigational techniques, though flawed in some aspects, advanced maritime science. His detailed wind and current observations contributed to understanding Atlantic navigation patterns still relevant today. The caravel design influenced shipbuilding for centuries. Popular misconceptions about Columbus provide opportunities for educational engagement. The persistent myth that he proved Earth was round, educated Europeans already knew this, opens discussions about historical context and scientific development. His interaction with indigenous peoples raises critical questions about cultural contact and conquest that remain relevant in modern diplomatic relations. The expedition's economic aspects resonate with contemporary global trade discussions. Columbus's journey initiated new patterns of international commerce that evolved into modern global trade networks. His arrangements with the Spanish crown established precedents for public-private partnerships in exploration that influence modern space exploration ventures. Maritime archaeology continues uncovering new evidence about the period. Underwater excavations in the Caribbean provide tangible connections to the Age of Discovery, while analysis of shipwrecks helps reconstruct details of 15th century navigation and shipboard life. Would you like to learn more about these fascinating aspects of historical discovery? Join our Modern Age Chronicles community, where we regularly explore such compelling historical narratives. Like this video, share it with fellow history enthusiasts, and subscribe to our channel for more exclusive content and in-depth analysis. The modern age holds countless such turning points, and we're here to uncover them together. See you in our next episode.